Have you ever looked at your bank account and wondered why life seems to cost more than it does for everyone else? Not because you're reckless, not because you don't understand money, not because you aren't intelligent enough to manage your finances. In fact, many women with ADHD are highly capable, successful, and responsible. They manage teams, businesses, households, and families. Yet despite earning a decent income, many still feel as if money disappears faster than it should. Maybe it's the groceries you forgot you already bought, the subscription you've been paying for 18 months without realizing it, the clothes purchased during an exhausted evening that never quite felt right, the convenience spending that seems harmless in the moment but adds up over time, or the constant feeling that you're spending money simply to make life manageable. What many women don't realize is that ADHD has financial consequences that go far beyond impulsive shopping. And for many women, those consequences become more noticeable after 40. Because after 40, life becomes more complex. The mental load grows heavier. Hormonal changes begin affecting attention, emotional regulation, and decision-making. Responsibilities multiply. Energy becomes more precious. And suddenly, the hidden financial cost of ADHD becomes impossible to ignore. Today, I want to explore why ADHD often feels more expensive after 40, why this isn't simply a matter of discipline, and what you can do to reduce the financial burden without constantly fighting your brain. One of the biggest misunderstandings about ADHD is the idea that it is primarily a problem of attention. Most women who receive a diagnosis later in life quickly realize that attention is only one piece of the puzzle. ADHD affects planning, organization, emotional regulation, working memory, prioritization, task initiation, and decision-making. When all of these systems are involved, money naturally becomes affected as well. Financial management is essentially a collection of executive function tasks. It requires planning ahead, remembering deadlines, delaying gratification, organizing information, evaluating options, and making decisions. In other words, it relies heavily on the exact functions ADHD makes more difficult. Many women spend years believing they simply need a better budget, but budgeting is rarely the core issue. The issue is often the invisible cognitive effort required to manage daily life. By the time many women reach their 40s, that effort has been accumulating for decades. Careers become more demanding, relationships become more complex, aging parents may require support, health concerns begin demanding attention, household responsibilities increase, life simply contains more moving parts than it did at 25. Every one of those responsibilities consumes mental bandwidth, and mental bandwidth is one of the most valuable resources an ADHD brain possesses. This is where the concept of the ADHD tax becomes useful. The ADHD tax is not an official fee. It is the extra money people spend because executive function challenges create friction in everyday life. It might be a late payment fee because a bill slipped through the cracks. It might be replacing something that was misplaced. It might be paying extra for rush shipping because a task was postponed until the last moment. It might be forgetting to return an item before the return window closed. Each individual event seems insignificant, but when these small expenses occur repeatedly over years, they can quietly drain a substantial amount of money. What makes this particularly frustrating is that most of these costs are not the result of poor intentions. Nobody wakes up hoping to pay a late fee. Nobody wants to buy something twice because they forgot they already owned it. Yet many women blame themselves for these situations because society tends to frame financial mistakes as character flaws rather than executive function challenges. The result is often guilt layered on top of the original problem. Another reason ADHD can feel more expensive after 40 is decision fatigue. Modern life requires an astonishing number of decisions every single day. What should I eat? What should I wear? Which email should I answer first? Which task is most important? Should I buy this now or wait? Is this the best option? Should I compare more prices? Most people underestimate how much energy decision-making requires. For ADHD brains, the cost can be even higher because filtering information and prioritizing options often requires more effort. As the day progresses and mental energy decreases, the brain naturally begins searching for relief. This is where convenience spending enters the picture. Ordering food instead of cooking, paying for faster delivery, choosing the easier option rather than the most economical one, purchasing something because researching alternatives feels exhausting. These decisions are often portrayed as laziness, but that interpretation misses something important. Many of these purchases are actually attempts to conserve cognitive energy. The brain is trying to reduce workload. The problem is that reducing mental effort in the short term often increases financial costs in the long term. There is also an emotional component that deserves far more attention than it typically receives. Many purchases are not driven by a genuine desire for the item itself. They are driven by a desire to change an emotional state. Stress, boredom, overwhelm, loneliness, frustration, exhaustion, and even anxiety can create a powerful urge to seek stimulation or relief. Shopping provides novelty, and novelty increases dopamine. For an ADHD brain, dopamine is particularly compelling. The anticipation of a purchase can temporarily improve mood, create excitement, and provide a brief sense of reward. This helps explain why so many impulsive purchases lose their appeal shortly after arriving. The object was never really the point. The brain was seeking a temporary emotional shift. Once that shift occurs, the item itself often becomes surprisingly unimportant. Many women recognize this pattern immediately when they look back at purchases that seemed absolutely necessary in the moment, but quickly became irrelevant afterward. Hormonal changes can make this dynamic even more challenging. Many women report that ADHD symptoms become more noticeable during perimenopause and beyond. While every woman experiences this differently, declining estrogen levels can influence dopamine systems and executive function. As a result, some women notice increased distractibility, greater emotional reactivity, more mental fatigue, and more difficulty with impulse control. The strategies that worked in their 30s may suddenly feel less effective. This often creates confusion because women assume they are somehow becoming less disciplined when in reality their neurological environment is changing. Another hidden financial cost involves overwhelm itself. When the nervous system is overloaded, future planning becomes harder, meal planning becomes harder, travel planning becomes harder, financial planning becomes harder. Long-term thinking requires available cognitive resources. When those resources are depleted, the brain naturally focuses on immediate needs and immediate relief. This makes perfect sense from a survival perspective. The challenge is that short-term solutions are frequently more expensive than long-term strategies. An overwhelmed brain is more likely to make urgent decisions, and urgent decisions almost always cost more than intentional ones. When people feel regulated and calm, they have access to perspective. They can compare options, delay purchases, and think strategically. When people feel overwhelmed, the priority becomes reducing discomfort as quickly as possible. The difference between those two states often has significant financial consequences. This is why I believe one of the most important shifts ADHD women can make after 40 is recognizing the connection between nervous system regulation and financial well-being. We often treat money management as a purely financial skill, but it is also an energy management skill. The state of your nervous system influences the quality of your decisions. Think about the times you make your best financial choices. You're usually rested, you're usually calm, you have mental space, You are not trying to solve 10 problems simultaneously. In those moments, patience becomes easier, planning becomes easier, delayed gratification becomes easier. Now think about the purchases you regret most. Many of them probably occurred during periods of exhaustion, overwhelm, stress, or emotional depletion. The financial behavior changed because the nervous system state changed. This realization can be incredibly liberating because it shifts the conversation away from blame. Instead of asking, "Why am I so bad with money?" you can begin asking, "What was happening in my nervous system when I made that decision?" That question often leads to far more useful insights. The good news is that improving financial outcomes does not necessarily require becoming more disciplined. In many cases, it requires reducing friction. The most ADHD-friendly financial systems tend to be simple rather than sophisticated. Automatic bill payments remove the need to remember due dates. Automatic savings remove the need to make repeated decisions. Fewer accounts create less mental clutter. Regular subscription reviews prevent unnecessary spending. Simpler systems reduce cognitive load, and reducing cognitive load is often more effective than relying on willpower. One particularly useful strategy is creating a pause between desire and action. Many purchases occur because the brain wants immediate resolution. It wants certainty. It wants relief. It wants dopamine. Introducing even a small delay can be remarkably effective. Waiting 24 hours before purchasing something allows emotional intensity to decrease. Often the urge disappears completely. If it doesn't, then the purchase may genuinely matter. Either outcome provides valuable information. Ultimately, many women discover that ADHD feels more expensive after 40 because life itself becomes more demanding after 40. The issue is rarely intelligence, it is rarely capability, and it is rarely a lack of effort. The issue is that the brain is managing an enormous number of competing demands while operating within a world that constantly requires planning, organization, and decision-making. If finances have felt harder than they should, I want you to know that this does not automatically mean you are irresponsible. It may simply mean that your brain has been carrying a heavier load than most people realize, and perhaps a heavier load than you realized yourself. The goal is not perfect financial behavior. The goal is creating a life that requires less constant effort. Because when your nervous system feels safer, your decisions become clearer. When your decisions become clearer, your finances often improve naturally. And when that happens, life begins to feel a little less expensive, not just financially, but emotionally as well. If this video resonated with you, let me know in the comments. What has been the biggest ADHD tax in your life? And if you're interested in building more energy, more calm, and a stronger nervous system after 40, make sure to subscribe to Complex Brain Living. New videos every Wednesday and Sunday exploring ADHD, longevity, nervous system health, and slow living for women with complex brains. Until next time, take care of yourself, and remember that sometimes protecting your energy is one of the smartest financial decisions you can make.